Okay, so step numero uno. So you want to build from the top to the bottom. And the way you do that is you lay down roughly how big each section is. For this destroyer, the Arleigh Burke Class Destroyer, we usually split up into 3 sections: the bow, the main section, and the helicopter landing pad. For this exact destroyer, I'll give you the measurements. Well, this should be about 1/2 of this, maybe a little less, and this should be around 1/3 of the main section. If you want to make a different destroyer, you might have to use different proportions. You may want to lay out measurements for the bow separately because it can get very complicated. Again, for those of you who want to build the same destroyer, we use 4 here, 4 here, 4 here, and then maybe like 3.5 because we have a hinge technique right here. But we want this to be a little shorter than this. At first, we kind of had this nice simple design where this is one segment, one stud farther than this one is one stud farther than that, but you should, around the middle, you should start to have this drag back a little to get the idea that the bottom is thinner than the top. As you can see here, now you have a difference of 4 or 3 studs. One last thing, this bow needs to slightly go upward. It doesn't have to be as exaggerated as mine. There are also a few things you want to keep in mind when you're building the middle section. As you can see right here, one of the most important things is wall thickness. Now, when I'm talking about these gray pieces right here, you probably want the very top layer to be 2 by 4s, 8, 6, etc., depending on what you have. But as a general rule, either one of these two should be a 1 by 2, 4, etc., because if these are all the same thickness, then as you can see, I built an inner frame here. There will be no way for that to hold on to your wall. Now, when you're building something like this, durability is very important. And another thing of durability is making this very brick dense. Okay, so take a look at this. Yes, that's very ugly. That is colored bricks, but we have a use for that. That's to support this entire thing. Because we don't waste precious gray bricks, we use these more common pieces instead. Because you have a wall of gray around them, you can't really see them. Also, I'd like to point out, you should also use plates for the top. As you can see here, that is a plate, and that is probably also a plate, because plates, when they're on the top, they provide more surface coverage than regular bricks. For example, a 6x6 can cover much more area than even the biggest bricks, and not to mention things like 6x12s, etc. The last part is this hull curve. Now, you may use whatever hull curve you find comfortable, but for my exact replica, this is 1 stud thick, this is 2 studs thick, and you don't have to put this layer of plates here like I did, but generally you want this layer to be 4 studs thick. Depending on the ship, again, you can choose whatever combination you like. It can even be something that doesn't exist, because feel free to use your imagination. Quick tip about the helicopter landing pad. So you can see that this layer usually is 2 studs thick, but because we have the helicopter landing pad trying to like cut into the main section, you want this to be thinner than the rest because there will be 2 little connection points for this to be durable. And again, durability, durability, durability. You might also like to take a look at this section. So in case you don't have any 2x2 inverted slopes to complete the curvature, you can grab these regular slopes and you can just tip them over with pins. As you can see here, I kind of have a carve in here for it to fit in, and you can see that there is a 1x2 brick with the knob slash studs on the side, and that's where you have these hinge bricks, you know, and then you slide them in right here and it fits in smoothly. So here's the next step, the superstructure. Now I'm assuming that you are going to be building the same Arleigh Burke Class Destroyer as I am, so if you're not, you should just check some blueprints and images. Now we'll get started. So first of all, I built this first. This is a helicopter hangar and missile launching platform. For this scale, it's 2 bricks high. It can be 1 brick or 4 bricks depending on your scale. And as you can see, a little helicopter flies in here, yay! Anyways, you can see it extends after this corner plate to this, where essentially this tower superstructure stands. I think that's where a bunch of diesel exhaust comes out. As you can see, I purposely had these dark gray here, and these are actual steps on the real ship. And this is 8, this is 6, this is 5, and this is 4. Note how I did not apply an angle here as in the real ship, because it would just be a little too complicated for such a scale, and we're keeping it simple right now. The same thing for this next tower, but before we build all of this, we have to make sure we know how to build the bottom layer. Okay, I'm only gonna explain half of this because this is symmetrical. A 3x3, 10, and a 4x4 corner pieces if you want it to be the same scale. If you want it to be a different scale, you may slightly change it depending on how much of a difference it is, but you get the idea. Moving up, you can see it's another 3x3, but this time it's 9, and it runs essentially up to where the 4x4 slope starts. You can see that we have this tower. For this scale, again, we have 5 and another strategically located 3 stud long dark gray contrasts the rest of it because it's another detail on the real ship. Now moving to the main command module, this is where it gets complicated. So at the front here, you have a 2x4 tower. Again, we're not really focusing much on the angles because it's so minor. You have a fan lax located here. I'll get more onto the fan lax later. Then, as you can see, we run more of these 3x3s up until it's 3 bricks tall for this scale. And then we have a bunch of black plates. So we have this kind of layer right here going down. And then you have this little protrusion up top. I have a slightly higher layer up here where you have this slope slash wedge section here so that it creates a smooth effect. If you don't have another 2x2 like me, you can just use a slope on a brick with 2 studs on the side. Also, these round little radar thingies sit here for more detail. And on top of the protrusion, we have an illuminator. Note how this is 1 plate higher than this. There's another detail you might want to watch out for. There's also a protrusion off the command center. It's just, I managed it with 2 layers of plates. You don't have to incorporate that, but that's just a neat little thing if you have extra plates. And now for the location of all of these. You have an illuminator here, and you have another illuminators here and here on the steps. And you also have the gun, as I mentioned, in front of the missile launchers. And you have these domes here, 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 and here. And then the mast, I did it with hinges, and I have this little tile and plate to make sure that's at the right angle. This is the standard 8-inch gun on the Arleigh Burke Class Destroyer. And correct me if I'm wrong, it might also be on the Ticonderoga class cruiser. As you can see, the front part I'm referring to towards the gun has a bit of a slope, but the back is almost vertical. Again, it's not completely vertical, but for simplicity reasons and because it's so small, I kept it completely vertical. Now the gun should be a thin bar, and taking apart this, you can find that the inside is a piece with studs on all 4 sides. If you can't find that, you should just ignore these and just use a slope instead. Okay, now that we're talking about the gun, I also like to point out that the missile launchers up front should be about 2 studs thick if we're talking at this scale. And the gun should be just forward of these missile launchers. The back should be double the size of the front missile launchers. So as you can see here, it's a 4x4 at the back. And that pretty much does it for the main armament. You'll also find these 2 Sea-Wiz Fan-Lax guns, and these are essentially really high rapid, medium caliber guns. They fire really fast, and they have a giant magazine at the top which holds all the rounds. I use a T-bar as the gun and as to hold everything together. I used a bush piece for the magazine on both of these. Remember, one is at the back on the tower, and the other is at the front here where I showed you they had the 2x4 raised platform. Now for the front one, you may want to use a hollow stud and then some of this half bush here to like slide it in. And for this one, you just want a jumper plate, and since the jumper plate usually have a hollow stud, you can just stick this right in. The vertical missile launch cells on the destroyer can be made using 1x2 grill pieces, 1x2 ingots, or tiles, depending on which one you have the most. I chose the grill pieces, but the ingots are preferably better than the tiles because they provide more detail. Okay, so here are the other 3 details. So here is the round dome. It's essentially a round tile and a round plate. And this is the illuminator for the radar. Essentially, there is a hollow stud at the bottom and one of these little studs, I do believe, with a bar at the top. And you can get these at some sets. I found this one in one of the classic space sets where it's like they have these like bunch of pieces for you to build spacey things. I found this in that one. You can also buy these separately, or you could just find a way to use hinges and a stud or a round plate to do that. And for the exhausts, for the diesel fumes, you just use these cylindrical 2x2 bricks. Remember, they should be black, not pink, not even gray. Black. Okay, we'll now take a closer look at the mast. The mast should be a little taller than the gray pieces, but it shouldn't be way too tall. And then this section, this entire column should be bigger than this section. And you only really have 2 of these protrusions coming out. One of them is long, and I use these little black things to represent the lines going across, and because it adds extra detail. And for this scale, I added a 2-piece column, and then I have a shorter like stick up top, and then finally I capped it off with a 2x2 plate and one of those same radar domes you can see on the main superstructure. You also want to pay attention to this back part. As you can see here, it starts like thinning out until it reaches here where it's pretty much only 2 plates. And this is to accommodate the propellers and the rudder. The rudder, I made it using one of these long slopes and a 1x3, but you might also want to incorporate the mirroring slope if you want. It's not completely necessary, but you may do it if you want. These propellers are simple. You just have these plate with the Technic holes, and then you have 2 of these gears here, and then you have this axle that holds it in place. Oh yeah, for the sonar thing at the front, you just want you want some curvature here, and then you want to round it out, and then it starts to shrink back into the hull. Oh yeah, quick little thing. I'd also like to show you this little helicopter. It's very, very simple. After that, this is Lego Maniac signing off. This layer should be 1 cent wide.